types of speakers: helpful, difficult, and annoying conversation habits. Every conversation has a feeling. Some speakers make people feel included, relaxed, and interested. Others make people feel corrected, trapped, dismissed, or tired. The difference is usually not one perfect sentence. It is a pattern of habits. When people talk about being a good speaker, they often think about confidence, vocabulary, humor, or sounding clever. Those things can help, but they are not enough. A person can sound confident and still be exhausting to speak with. A person can know many facts and still make others feel small. A good speaker is not simply someone who talks well. A good speaker helps the conversation work. They know when to explain, when to ask, when to listen, when to stop, and when to make space for another person's experience. The best speakers do not dominate the room. They help the room breathe. What makes a speaker good? Good speakers are usually easy to talk to because they notice the other person. They can tell when someone is interested, confused, quiet, rushed, or uncomfortable. They do not keep pushing the same style of speaking regardless of the response they are getting. This does not mean they are passive. Good speakers can still be funny, direct, expressive, and knowledgeable. The important part is balance. They add something to the conversation without taking ownership of the whole thing. The balanced speaker shares enough to be interesting, then makes room for the other person. They do not treat every pause as a stage to fill. The curious listener asks questions because they want to understand, not because they are collecting details to judge or correct later. The clear speaker explains their point in a simple order, checks whether it makes sense, and avoids adding 10 extra stories at once. The encouraging speaker helps others feel safe to continue. Their tone says, "I am with you," not "I am waiting to catch you out." Good speakers make other people visible. A helpful speaker does not only wait for their turn. They listen for meaning. They might say, "So the difficult part was not only what happened, but that nobody took it seriously?" That kind of response shows attention. It also helps the other person feel understood without needing to repeat the story again and again. Good speakers also ask questions that are easy to answer. They do not ask 5 questions at once, turn the person into an interview subject, or use questions to prove a point. A good question opens the conversation. A bad question corners it. Useful phrases include, "What part mattered most to you? How did that come across to you? Do you want advice, or do you mainly want me to listen? That makes sense. What happened after that? I have a thought, but I want to hear the rest first." Annoying speaking habits are not always caused by bad intentions. Some people interrupt because they are excited. Some explain too much because they want to be useful. Some correct others because accuracy matters to them. The problem is the effect. The other person starts to feel unseen, judged, or blocked. The know-it-all corrects small details, adds unnecessary facts, or acts as if every conversation is a test they must win. A better direction is to add knowledge only when it helps the conversation, and use softer phrases such as, "I might be wrong, but I have heard it this way." The conversation stopper. The conversation stopper replies with dead-end phrases such as "okay," "anyway," "whatever," or "that is obvious," which gives the other person nowhere to go. A better direction is this: if you do not want to continue, close kindly. If you do want to continue, add one small question or comment. The interrupter. The interrupter jumps in before the other person finishes, often because they are excited, impatient, or worried they will forget their point. A better direction is to let the person finish one complete thought, then respond to what they actually said before adding your own idea. The one-upper. The one-upper turns someone else's story into a bigger story about themselves. The other person may feel erased instead of understood. A better direction is to acknowledge the person's moment first. If your own story is useful, share it after you have shown that you heard theirs. The endless lecturer. The endless lecturer explains for too long without noticing that the other person has stopped engaging. A better direction is to pause after the main point and ask, "Does that answer it, or should I explain one part more clearly?" The know-it-all problem. The know-it-all is not annoying because they know things. People often enjoy talking to someone knowledgeable. The problem starts when knowledge becomes a performance of superiority. If every small mistake is corrected, every story is improved, and every opinion is turned into a lecture, the conversation stops feeling mutual. A know-it-all may think, "I am just being accurate," but the listener may hear, "You are not smart enough to speak freely around me." Over time, people may stop sharing ideas because they do not want every sentence examined. Before correcting someone, ask yourself, does this detail protect the meaning, or am I correcting it because I want to feel clever? The conversation stopper problem. A conversation stopper shuts down momentum. Sometimes they do it with one-word replies. Sometimes they do it with a judgment that makes the other person feel foolish. That is boring. Why would you care about that? Or everyone knows that already. Of course, nobody has to continue every topic forever. You are allowed to be tired, busy, or uninterested. The skill is to exit without making the other person feel ridiculous for trying to connect. A warmer close might be, I do not know much about that, but I can see you are into it. Or, I need to get back to work, but tell me the main part before I go. Examples, less effective and better. When you know the correct answer. Situation, someone says a small fact wrong, but correcting it is not important to the main conversation. Less effective. Actually, that's wrong. Everyone knows it happened in a different year. Better. I think the date might be different, but your main point makes sense. It avoids embarrassing them over a small detail. It keeps the conversation focused on meaning. It shows that being accurate does not require sounding superior. When you are losing interest. Situation, the topic is not interesting to you, but the other person is still speaking with energy. Less effective. Yeah, anyway. Better. I may not know much about this topic, but what made you interested in it? Why this works? It is honest without being dismissive. It gives the person a warmer route to continue. It moves from the topic itself to the person behind the topic. When you interrupted. Situation. You jumped in too quickly and noticed the other person had not finished. Less effective. Sorry, but I just need to say this quickly. Better. Sorry, I cut you off. Finish your thought first, then I will add mine. Why this works? It repairs the interruption immediately. It gives the floor back instead of only saying sorry. It helps the other person feel respected. How to tell which type you are becoming. Most people move between different speaker types depending on mood, confidence, stress, and who they are with. You might be a balanced speaker with friends, but become a lecturer at work. You might be curious with strangers, but interrupt family because you feel too comfortable. The goal is not to label yourself forever. The goal is to notice your current habit. Ask yourself, do people become quieter after I speak? Do I often correct details that do not change the point? Do I ask questions, or mostly wait to tell my own story? Do people get to finish their thoughts around me? Do I know how to end a topic kindly instead of killing it? After speaking with me, would someone feel heard or judged? How to become easier to talk to. You do not need to become quiet or agreeable to be a better speaker. You need to become more responsive. Responsive speakers adjust. They notice when a point has landed, when a topic needs a question, when someone wants encouragement, and when the conversation needs a clean ending. Try the two-turn rule. After you make a point, give the other person a real chance to respond before adding another point. If you are explaining something complex, pause and check whether they want more detail. If you disagree, respond to their actual meaning before giving your correction. A useful phrase is, I have a different thought, but I want to make sure I understood you first. How spekero can help you practice. You can use spekero to record short conversation responses and listen back for tone, pace, and balance. Try recording a know-it-all version first. Correct, explain, and add too much detail. Then record a better version where you acknowledge the person, add only the useful point, and ask one open question. Listening back helps because many annoying habits are easier to hear from the outside. You may notice that your correction sounds sharper than you intended, or that your quick explanation is much longer than the other person needed. Related articles include different tones of speaking, and why being a good listener can help you become a better speaker. Final thought. The most likable speaker is not always the funniest, smartest, or loudest person in the room. Often, it is the person who makes talking feel easy. They know when to share and when to listen. They can be interesting without taking over. They can be correct without making others feel foolish. If you want to become a better speaker, start by noticing the effect you have on the conversation. When people leave a conversation feeling respected, included, and free to speak, your speaking style is doing something right.